I'm a parent, and it seems to me that the job description of being a parent has slightly expanded since my parents were parents. And I now, at the weekend, have to be a taxi driver, ferrying my kids around to their various activities, and in my kids' case, mainly sporting activities. And you have to sort of go and stand on the touchline, which in England means braving the wind and the rain, occasionally the sun, and cheer your little darlings on as they compete to varying degrees of success on the sporting pitch. And something else happens on the touchline, which is that you sort of notice that there are some other sort of adult human beings standing near you who, some of them are sort of cheering at relatively the same time that you are. And you kind of figure out that they are parents of other children on the team. And being English, we're a little bit reserved, and so we sort of nod at each other for a little while. And maybe over a period of months, we might say hello. and then eventually you strike up a conversation. And that's how I met a guy called Andy. And Andy then asked me a question which is quite sort of defining in our culture. And he asked me, Nick, what do you do? And he didn't mean be a taxi driver or cheerleader. He meant, what do I do in my main job? And I said, well, I'm a statistician. And he said, oh, right, that's interesting. What do you do statistics in? And I said, well, I do statistics in happiness at work. And then he looked at me very quizzically. And he goes, well, I understand the word happiness, and I understand the word work. But I had never thought about putting them in the same sentence together. And I think what Andy is talking about is a sort of perception that very many of us have, which is that emotions and the workplace don't go together. And also another one deeper, which is that there's a sort of formula for life, which is that success leads to happiness. That if I work hard, then I can be happy in the weekend, or go on holiday and be happy, or retire and be happy. And, happiness really, really gets kicked into the future, and it's not here in the present. And what I want to say is I think the reality is actually the other way around, which is that happiness leads to success, and that this is actually, what life is about. So, I think we should examine this word happiness a bit more. So I want to show you a picture of happiness. This is Pete. Pete is actually my best mate, my best friend. And I can all see from your reaction that lots of you are smiling at Pete now. And we can all recognize that in this picture, he's happy, he's smiling. He's got this, glint in his eye, and he's got wrinkles around them. He's got wrinkles anyway, but it's particularly showing at the moment. And we can be sure that if everybody recognizes happiness and experiences it, that it is a universal human phenomenon. And so from an evolutionary perspective, we know that happiness must be highly functional. It must have helped us survive and thrive through the millennia. We all sort of understand that something like anger and fear is part of the fight and flight mechanism. That, when we're angry, we're responding to someone that's sort of a violation, and we want to avoid a future violation like that. Fear is about a threat to our well-being, a threat to our physical health. And, it's functional for us to sometimes freeze and hope the predator doesn't notice us, or to run away, which in my case isn't very quick, but, run away, or to gather together to defend ourselves. So we have functional responses to those emotions, and the emotions are readying us to act in the world. But what about happiness? What is its function? Well, a very high energy emotion like enthusiasm is, we're bursting with energy, and it's about mobilizing our energy to seize an opportunity. Another emotion like interest is like focusing our energy so we can commit to a task which is perhaps challenging and get medium-term benefits. So happiness and these positive emotions are actually highly functional to us as individuals. But there's something else that goes on with happiness too, which is, why is Pete happy in this picture? Well, the reason that Pete's happy in this picture is he's with me. And that says something very much about happiness, that happiness is almost a social emotion. That, if you walk down the street laughing to yourself, you look slightly crazy. Whereas if you're doing it with someone else, it is the most natural phenomena in the world. And happiness is a way that we build relationships. My smile is literally a signal that you can approach me. If I scowl, you stay away. If I smile, you can approach me. And so we build relationships through our happiness. And if we think about our teams and our organizations, and as leaders or managers or in a team, what we want to do is to build happy, highly functional teams. These are going to be the most creative, successful teams for you. When people trust each other, they get along well, and they're doing great work. We all know that this isn't great. When we're miserable at work, or when our people in our team or organization are miserable at work, we know they are going to do miserable work. Miserable people do miserable work. So we do something about that normally. But what I think is not understood very well is that being okay at work is actually not okay. That you're missing out on a huge happiness dividend if you settle for okay. If you're a leader and your people are okay, there's no fires to put out, but there's no fires lit underneath them either. So really, really think about how you can create happier teams. And the interesting thing is that, psychologists have been studying some of these things for quite a long time. And there's a classic experiment which goes back to the 1940s. It's called the Dunkirk candle experiment. And it's a task that researchers set people. And they give you a candle, some matches, and some tacks. And they say, attach the candle to the wall in such a way that when you light it, the wax doesn't drip on the floor. It's quite a simple problem, but you have to use creative lateral thinking in order to solve it. What the psychologists want you to do, because in their book there's one correct solution to this, which is that you have to identify that the box is part of the solution. And you take the tacks out of the box, you tack the box to the wall, put the candle in the box, and hey presto, the wax doesn't drip on the floor. Now, some people are so creative, they come up with extraordinary solutions like this one, where he's ripped the box apart, he's put the candle upside down, and the candle... So, not exceptionally practical, but highly creative. And psychologists, they like to do experiments on people rather than animals, though people are animals, so okay, but they're doing research, and so these one researchers, they basically took half of the room, and they didn't do anything to you, just set you the task, and the other half, they put you in a good mood, and then set you the task. And what was fascinating about this is the people that had no manipulation, is what they call it, 13% of them solved the problem in 10 minutes. Whereas the ones that were put into a good mood, 75% of people solved the problem. So we have here sort of direct evidence that, happiness is leading to creativity. And if you run a business and organization these days, it is almost a case of innovate or die. And creativity is the precursor to innovation. Innovation's where you've actually got a useful candle solution, not the upside-down one. But, you've got one that's useful and you can repeat. And we know that innovation leads to business success. So we have a sort of psychological pathway here. There's another way we can look at data. We call it ecological studies, where we're observing a system. And this piece of research had 140,000 people in it, 2,000 teams, and they're looking at happiness and performance through time. And is it performance leading to happiness, or is it happiness leading to performance? And the researchers, led by Jim Harter, found out that both of these pathways existed, that there is some truth in the fact that success leads to happiness. But the pathway from happiness to performance and success was twice as strong as from performance to happiness. Twice as strong. We can also look at other data. We know a lot of businesses judge themselves by their stock market performance. And this guy at the London Business School called Alex Edmonds, he has looked at the stock market valuation of organizations in the Great Place to Work list. And this is actually causal as well, because he's sort of buying a sort of simulated block of stocks the day the Great Place to Work list is released, and then selling it a year later in his simulations. And what he's done is he's shown that if you had a sort of benchmark over that period, your stocks would do this. But if you bought his portfolio, it did this, which is sort of like, instead of 1.7 times return on investment, it's 2.7 times. That's 2 to 4% every year. That is Warren Buffett-style returns on your investment by looking at the culture of these organizations, not just their product performance or whatever. So what we have here is that we have direct evidence that we can reverse this equation and we can think about happiness leading to success. And we also have something interesting going on as well, in that there's a feedback loop back from success to happiness. So you can sort of open up a virtuous cycle in your organization with one building on the other. Now, I'm a statistician. I look at data all the time on happiness at work and other happiness data, actually. But we've got data, representative samples that we use from the UK, the US, and about 5 other countries in Latin America and Europe. And what starts to emerge out of the data are all sorts of factors that start leading to happiness at work. But in every country we look at, these sort of factors come out as the most strong. Things like relationships, fairness, autonomy, achievements, meaning and purpose. And they keep coming through the data consistently. And so, I wanted to create ways that you can think about how you can bring happiness to your organization, to your team. So we started to think about messaging these in 5 ways to happiness at work, we call them. And the first one of these is connect, which is help people in your organization connect better, more than you just think about for the narrow business goals that you have. Help build relationships between teams, to customers, to suppliers, to broader communities, but connect people. The second one is be fair. If you don't treat people fairly, you're not going to get on the starting block of happiness at work. Fair pay, fair work-life balance, these things are important. The third is to empower people. Dare to delegate. Micromanagement is terrible for happiness at work. Let people use their strengths. Give them an opportunity to shape their work and influence it. And that goes hand in hand with the next one, which is challenge people. It's a total misconception to think that people don't want to work. We actually like achieving things at work. And with challenge, there's this beautiful sweet spot where we sort of get pulled by our nose forward, just into the space that's interesting. If you set us 2 big challenges, we're going to stumble into stress and anxiety. If you don't give us enough, we're going to get so laid back and bored and apathetic. But there's a sweet spot there with challenge. And the final one is inspire people. Get people to see the bigger picture about what you're doing, not just the narrow business goals, but actually go beyond that to helping them understand how they're helping their colleagues, their clients and customers, the broader society even. Inspire people. So who's already sort of doing this sort of stuff? Well, this picture is from Pixar, where they built this beautiful atrium, and they built it very deliberately to help people collide into each other. Steve Jobs at the time talked about the way that if you let people collide, then you're going to get synchronicity happen. New amazing things are going to happen. Now, most people can't afford to build such an inspiring big space in their organizations, but your kitchens, make your kitchens nice. The water cooler, a little place in the garden for people to chat to each other, but really, really foster those relationships. This is from Zappos. Zappos is a US online shoe company, sells shoes online. Their whole business model has been really focused on happiness. The guys and girls that answer the telephones or deal with the emails from customers, normally customers who are looking for their shoes, where are they? And they're told they're not giving any sort of targets on how quickly they need to get rid of a customer on the phone. Instead, they're given 2 rules. And the rules are, be yourself, use your judgment. How empowering is that? These guys and girls go to work inspired to do a good job, and Zappos wins all sorts of awards for its customer service. This is an interesting organization, Open English. They are an online platform for learning English in Latin America. When their CEO, Andreas Marino, started talking about the fact that actually they weren't selling a software platform, they were selling life transformation. Because there is an expression in Latin America which is no English, no future. And so they were actually helping people transform their lives for themselves and for their families. And then not only did everyone go to work much happier because they were part of something bigger, but actually sales went up by 20 to 40%. And then my favorite example of an organization, this guy's called Josh de Blok. The organization I doubt most of you have heard of, it's called Buurtzorg. It's a Dutch community nursing organization, a not-for-profit. Josh was a community nurse, and he felt that community nursing had got very narrow in what you had to do. That you sort of went in, you did your intervention, and you got out again. And he went into nursing to help people, to support people in their healing processes. He turned the whole organization upside down, or founded his organization, which is upside down, where the top of the organization are self-organizing teams of 8 to 12 nurses in the community. They organize everything about their work. And the central functions are all support. They're like coaches to them. Buurtzorg has grown from no employees to 9,000 employees over a 10-year period since its initiation. Nurses have voted for their feet, and they come to work for Buurtzorg. They are now the largest provider in the Netherlands, and they are providing community healthcare 20% lower than their rivals because they deal with the whole patient, and that actually is a much more healing process. So, I hope that I persuaded you that we need to get rid of this formula. We need to replace it with one where we think about happiness leading to success. That you can open a virtuous cycle in your organization if you start with happiness and let your success build upon that. And that you can go away thinking that happiness and work do belong in the same sentence, that happiness is a serious business, and if you're in a business, that you will take happiness seriously. Thank you very much.